welcome back to another Inside Lansing, and today's guest is Dan Podgorski, Village Administrator. Dan, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So let's start with probably the elephant in the room, the transition you've had from mayor to village administrator. People knew you as mayor, probably still occasionally call you Mayor Podgorski, but now you're village administrator. What was that change like?
It certainly is something that's unique. I obviously the only person in town to ever serve as mayor and administrator. The administrator's position is really still something that's new to Lansing. Lansing's only had it for really a short period of time, and so the transition has been it's been unique. It's been a bit of a challenge, but not as much of an adjustment as one might think. Back 8-9 years ago when I was mayor, there was no administrator, so the mayor's job was full-time, and so I had to prepare as a full-time mayor to advance every topic on our agenda and be ready to speak on everything. Obviously, that is also the job of the administrator, to be ready to advance all projects through the village board, working with all the department heads. So it's not unique in the sense of I have to work through all the issues, make sure you're on top of the pros and cons, anticipate what the board members are going to be interested in, try to have those answers laid out before you get to a meeting. Probably the one thing I don't have to worry about anymore is there's not as many public appearances for the administrator. That's still a job that the mayor gets to handle, and I'm fine with ceding those responsibilities to Mayor Item.
So you're now village administrator, and you say there's a lot of things that were similar to what you did before. So what is the difference between an administrator and a mayor then?
Well, and it does differ from town to town. Some mayors by design are part-time, and then the administrator in those towns basically runs operations day to day. In Lansing, the mayor is still full-time, and she chooses to be there and work a full-time schedule. But I am still charged with the day-to-day running of all the departments and advancing issues of development and other departmental issues through the board meetings. So the mayor is primarily working on issues such as regional issues like working with our state representatives, other state legislators, county representatives, South Suburban mayors and managers. She's responsible for maintaining those appointments and representing Lansing within those regional agencies. There are some mayors, some communities where the mayor is by design part-time, works another full-time job, and can only come in a couple hours during the week. And in those cases, the administrator has to communicate primarily through email or phone or during those scheduled meetings. So again, Lansing's situation is unique. The mayor is in the office every day, so we do communicate daily on issues, and she's up to speed on everything that's going on.
Well, it must be great to have the mayor around often so you can bounce ideas off each other and work together, and probably also get ready for events such as our snowfall and rainfall we had the past couple weeks. You want to talk a little bit about how we were prepared for that?
Sure. Yeah, it seems whether you believe in global warming or not, we certainly have entered a period of time where weather is much more severe, and the snowfall we had recently was a good example of that, and then the rain that followed it a couple days later was probably the even a better example of how severe weather can be. Our Public Works Department does a great job, as always. They always have. They're prepared for snowfall events. They prepare their equipment in the fall. They have a full load of salt in the salt dome, and they're prepared to shift into 12 hours on, 12 hours off shifts during major snow events, and that's what they did. So there's I think 11 guys come on, work 12 hours. There's 9 trucks that will work the different routes that service all the village streets, and so you have 9 people that come on, work for 12 hours straight, servicing the routes. There's a mechanic back in the shop in case one of the trucks goes down, and then the supervisor. And then after 12 hours, those guys get to come in, go home, and try to get some rest. and then another 11 guys come back on for 12 hours. So they worked extremely hard for 36, 48 hours there, while we were getting hit heavy with snow on that Friday, and then just when you thought you were done, Saturday night into Sunday, we got hit again. So they worked hard through the weekend. I'll always check in with the supervisors of Public Works on the night before and the morning of a big snow event, just to check in, make sure they're ready for it. They always are, but that's one of my jobs as the administrator, to make sure everyone's ready. And then, as you mentioned, we transitioned then into a major rainfall event,
Yes.
and with the temperature rising, then the snow melted. So then the calls aren't so much, hey, are the plows ready? The calls become, are we monitoring the level of rain that's collecting in the river, in the Little Cal River? We're watching how it's rising up on the dike wall. We're making sure that the catch basins at the ends of all the streets are free of leaves and twigs and branches that would otherwise cause the
Right.
rainfall to sit in the streets
And flood.
and in reality, if it is backing up in your street, we'd rather that's what it's designed to do. The houses are built up, and then the driveways slant down towards the street. That's where you want the water to collect. It's an inconvenience. Much better to have it collect in the street
Yes, of course.
than in your yards or in your homes. There are some areas of town where it's extremely low, and if North Creek is backed up, there are some areas of town which do experience some backup issues, and we try to work with those homeowners as much as we can to get them cleaned up and try to keep the water flowing as much as we can.
Well, I always see the best out of our public works, and rarely get to think about them. So I'm glad we got to acknowledge that a little bit here.
Okay.
So since Lansing's safe and sound, let's talk about the future in economic development. I know that we had Subway and Popeyes open recently, but what else can residents look forward to in the future of economic development?
Well, as you mentioned, there's a new Dunkin' Donuts and Subway opened up about 171st and Torrance, and the Popeyes just recently opened as well, about 181st and Torrance. There's some other projects that are upcoming. There's a J&J Sausage is going to be opening up in the coming months just north of the Burger King on Torrance
okay.
Avenue. And the village is finished acquiring the old La Balanza property and is readying to convey that to another user that wants to come in and convert that to a similar type of usage where it would be a Mexican grocery store and restaurant.
Oh, that's great.
There's also some interest by a major player in the market in the old landfill that exists
Really?
on 170th Street, the old Sexton landfill. For what would be, I guess, would best be described as like a family entertainment type center. Nothing we're ready to imminently announce, but we're working it diligently, and I think there's going to be some good things to announce in the near future. Some of the other things that are happening, you're seeing a recommitment by some of our existing businesses, and that's just as important, and sometimes even more important to your commercial base, is to retain what you have. A lot of times the big story tends to be new development. Who's coming to Lansing, or who's coming to whatever town you represent. But it's just as important to pay a lot of attention and take care of the existing business base that you have, and make sure that that they've got the resources they need. And make sure that they're committed to Lansing, and make sure they understand you're committed to them. So some of the things that Lansing has done over the years to encourage that commitment or that recommitment, the village wisely created a facade program on Ridge Road, which encourages the business owners in that development district to participate with the village on a facade improvement, meaning if they need new windows or doors or landscaping or lighting on the outside of their business to freshen it up, the village will participate with them. We've created a similar program on Bernice Road.
And by participate, you mean
Financially.
help financially with that is they pay you fit some of the bill.
Right, financially participate with them to a substantial degree, up to 40 or 50% of the cost, up to certain dollar
that's
amounts.
a lot.
It is, and you're seeing, you see the Gus Boxay's hardware has participated. You
great.
see how nice that building looks. Beggars more recently has participated in the program. Bragg's Automotive on Bernice Road is just got approved for a facade reimbursement program. And we're looking to create a similar type of facade program for the businesses on Torrance Avenue. That'll be something that we can expect to be discussing and hopefully approving sometime here in the next couple of months.
So the base is being built up.
Yeah, the base is being freshened up, and you always have to do that. Lansing and many just like other south suburbs, it's an older town, so you have to continually be working to refresh and to upkeep what you have.
Make the old new, bring in the new.
Right.
Now, what about also out at the airport? We have that wonderful Ford hangar.
Yeah.
Is there plans for that?
Yeah, great question, and nice segue, and this kind of falls into development as well. The Ford hangar, obviously built back in the late 1920s by Henry Ford. I think many people know that story. The village has owned the Lansing Municipal Airport since the mid-1970s. The historic Ford hangar really no longer is utilized for aeronautical purposes. It needs a lot of money to be put in to fix it up. It's in need of dire repairs. However, it's on the National Registry of Historic Places. It's got a lot of historical and cultural significance.
Yes.
What we are attempting to do, and I won't bore the viewers too much with this because it can get pretty detailed, but right now the historic Ford hangar is still under FAA grant assurances,
Really?
meaning that we have to use it for aeronautical purposes.
Yes.
However, because the useful life of the building as an aeronautical use has expired, we are seeking the FAA's release of the hangar from those grant assurances. What all that means is that if the building gets released from the FAA's guidance, it will still remain on the National Registry of Historic Places, but Lansing then will be given the opportunity to fix it up, and what our intention is to do is to then convert it into an aviation museum,
Really?
possibly some sort of a regional civic center where we can host regional events. We could host private events as well, and people could have doings at the Ford hangar.
Speaking of the Ford hangar, it's under FAA guidelines. How do we get it released from that?
Lansing officials have submitted a letter to the FAA as early as last summer requesting the removal of the Ford hangar from those grant assurances. We believe that there's language in the FAA rules which allow us to declare it exempt from those grant assurances even without their permission. However, because you're dealing with state and federal authorities, much easier if we get a letter and get their explicit cooperation and assurances. So to that end, the mayor and I and our airport manager most recently visited Congresswoman Robin Kelly, her office, just within the last week or so.
She went down there.
Well, she was home in her district office.
Okay.
So we didn't have to go to Washington. We were in her district office in Madison, and brought her a copy of the letter that we sent to the FAA last summer, and just explaining the process to her, explaining to her how the Ford hangar can become a regional asset, a civic center, an aviation museum, and just asking her to advance our letter and our request. She was happy to do so. She's returning to Washington here soon, and promised to take up the issue. So we're hopeful, keeping the fingers crossed, and that could be a major piece of development. That if you're a marketer, you speak in terms of destination drivers, things that bring people to your town. If we're able to convert the Ford hangar into an aviation museum and a civic center, now we have a destination driver on the south end of town that'll attract not just Lansing residents, but residents from all over who would want to come visit the museum and hold their events there.
So we're talking about the big picture here. We're talking about the economic development all over Lansing. But this kind of segues into the final portion of our interview, which is to talk about that one place that's being worked on, been worked on, and is probably going to be worked on all summer, Fox Point.
Yeah.
Where are we with that? When can we look at it being here?
Well, Fox Point it's on everybody's minds, as you mentioned, and you want to talk about destination drivers, as you mentioned, a segue. Imagine Lansing having a airport museum on the south end of town, and Fox Point, which is going to be a concert venue and a place for performances in the center of town, and possibly a family entertainment complex on the north end of town. You start contemplating Lansing having 2 or 3 destinations that now start attracting people from the outside, and that's the big picture that we're trying to build. But more specifically talking about Fox Point, it's been a long time in the works. It actually goes back 18, 19 years ago when Fox Home Lumber came down and the site was vacant for a long time. The village had other parties interested in utilizing that area. We had one specific user who wanted to come in and utilize it for boat and RV storage. The village turned down that development. They said no, not knowing that there would be a Fox Point that would rise up, but knowing that the area was adjacent to our downtown and in a significant piece of property that had a better use. We just didn't know what it was than just a place for boat and RV storage. And then the last administration grabbed onto the opportunity, and as events were starting to happen in that Fox Point area, they built the vision and the architectural plans for what's going to be Fox Point. And so now this administration picks up the ball, and the construction will be finished. It's about halfway finished, I guess. It should be ready to open in October of 2018 in time for the Autumn Fest, which is run by LACE, Lansing Association for Community Events, and they run the Autumn Fest, and they run the cruise nights that Lansing has, and they've been in to see us, make sure that Fox Point will be ready to open in the fall. And of course, you can never plan for contingencies such as labor stoppages or Mother Nature, but if everything holds true, the Fox Point should be ready to open by October of this year, of 2018. And then we're already working towards an operational plan to utilize it on a regular basis come 2019.
So there's just so much going on for Lansing right now, and I'm sure we could talk for hours on this, but we want to keep the show at a decent length.
Right. So we don't want to bore people.
Dan Podgorski, I'd like to thank you again for being on our show, but last thing before we go, what would you like the village residents to know what you're going to be doing here for them for the next few years?
Well, going back to my time as mayor, working on capital improvements was always a significant piece of your day-to-day activity and your vision. So we're working to create the funding for a capital improvement plan, which will get our streets in better repair, and to replace the aging equipment that our police and fire department and public works utilize. You have to constantly be planning for that. And nobody likes to talk about, new revenues, more revenues, but, the cost of labor continues to increase. The cost of health care continues to increase. It's much more expensive to replace streets today than it was 20 years ago. We're always working diligently to try to create capital improvement plans. You can obviously, you always have to run the village. You have to be there to handle the day-to-day, the vehicle stickers, the utility bills, the requests that come in, the calls for police, the calls for paramedic and fire, and you got to pick up the garbage and plow the streets. But you always have to be working at the same time on a parallel track, planning for major pieces of equipment that go down. You've got to create the funds for that, and you got to get the streets fixed up. So streets, sidewalks, that's a big priority for us as well.
So you're here to make sure that you make a better life for our village residents.
As best as we can.
Dan, thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.